Hello and welcome to Richard August, the autistic Christian, MGTOW, the red pill man who lights it up blue. This is today's Bible reading from the apocryphal text of my 1599 Geneva Bible. Today's readings are from chapters 4, 5, and 6 of the book of 1st Maccabees. And may God add his richest blessing to this reading of his holy word. 1st Maccabees, chapter 4. Then took Gorgias 5,000 footmen, and 1,000 of the best horsemen, and departed out of the camp by night, to invade the camp of the Jews and to slay them suddenly, and the men of the fortress were his guides. Now when Judas heard it, he removed, and they that were valiant men to smite the king's army which was at Emmaus, whiles yet the army was dispersed from the camp. In the mean season came Gorgias by night into Judas's camp, and when he found no man there, he sought them in the mountains, for, said he, they flee from us. But as soon as it was day, Judas showed himself in the field with 3,000 men, which had neither harness nor swords to their minds. And they saw that the armies of the heathen were strong and well armed, and their horsemen about them, and that these were expert men of war. Then said Judas to the men that were with him, Fear ye not their multitude, neither be afraid of their assault. Remember how our fathers were delivered in the Red Sea, when Pharaoh pursued them with an army. Therefore now let us cry unto heaven, and the Lord will have mercy upon us, and remember the covenant of our fathers, and will destroy this host before our face this day. So shall all the heathen know that there is one which delivereth and saveth Israel. Then the strangers lift up their eyes, and saw them coming against them. And they went out of their tents into the battle, and they that were with Judas blew the trumpets. So they joined together, and the heathen were discomfited, and fled by the plain. But the hindmost of them fell by the sword, and they pursued them unto Gazeron, and into the plains of Idumea, and of Azotus, and of Yamnia, so that there were slain of them about 3,000 men. So Judas turned again with his host from pursuing them, and said unto the people, Be not greedy of the spoils, for there is a battle before us. And Gorgias and the army is here by us in the mountain. But stand ye now fast against your enemies, and overcome them, that ye may safely take the spoils. As Judas was speaking these words, there appeared one part which looked from the mountains. But when Gorgias saw that his were fled, and that Judas's soldiers burnt the tents, for the smoke that was seen declared what was done. When they saw these things, they were sore afraid. And when they saw also that Judas and his host were in the field ready to set themselves in array, they fled every one into the land of strangers. So Judas turned again to spoil the tents, where he gat much gold and silver, and precious stones, and purple of the sea, and great riches. Thus they went home and sang psalms, and praised toward the heaven, for he is gracious, and his mercy endureth forever. And so Israel had a great victory in that day. Now all the strangers that escaped came and told Lysias all the things that were done, who, when he heard these things, were sore afraid and discouraged, because such things came not upon Israel as he would, neither such things as the king had commanded him came to pass. Therefore the next year following gathered Lysias 70,000 chosen footmen, and 5,000 horsemen to fight against Jerusalem. So they came into Idumea, and pitched their tents at Bethsura, where Judas came against them with 10,000 men. And when he saw that mighty army, he prayed and said, Blessed be thou, O Saviour of Israel, which didst destroy the assault of the mighty man by the hand of thy servant David, and gavest the host of the strangers into the hand of Jonathan, the son of Saul, and of his armor-bearer. Shut up this army in the hand of thy people of Israel, and let them be confounded with their power and with their horsemen. Make them afraid, and consume their boldness and strength, that they may be astonished at their destruction. Cast them down by the sword of them that love thee. Then shall all they that know thy name praise thee with songs. So they joined together, and there were slain of Lysias's host 5,000 men, and they fell before them. Then Lysias, seeing his army put to flight, and the manliness of Judas's soldiers, and that they were ready either to live or die valiantly, he went into Antiochia and gathered strangers. And when he had furnished his army, he thought again, being prepared to come against Judea. Then said Judas and his brethren, Behold, our enemies are discomfited. Let us now go up to cleanse and to repair the sanctuary. So all the host gathered them together and went up into the mountain of Zion. Now when they saw the sanctuary laid waste, and the altar defiled, and the doors burnt up, and the shrubs growing in the courts, as in a forest, or as on one of the mountains, and that the priests' chambers were broken down, they rent their clothes, and made great lamentation, and cast ashes upon their heads, and fell down to the ground on their faces, and blew an alarm with the trumpets, and cried toward heaven. Then Judas commanded certain of the men to fight against those which were in the castle, until he had cleansed the sanctuary. So he chose priests that were undefiled, such as delighted in the law, and they cleansed the sanctuary, and bore out the defiled stones into an unclean place, and consulted what to do with the altar of burnt offerings, which was polluted. So they thought it was best to destroy it, lest it should be a reproach unto them, because the heathen had defiled it. Therefore they destroyed the altar, and laid up the stones upon the mountain of the temple in a convenient place, until there should come a prophet to show what should be done with them. So they took whole stones according to the law, and builded a new altar according to the former, and made up the sanctuary, and the things that were within the temple, and the courts, and all things. They made also new holy vessels, and brought into the temple the candlestick, and the altar of burnt offerings, and of incense, and the table. And they burned incense upon the altar, and lighted the lamps which were upon the candlestick, that they might burn in the temple. They set also the showbread upon the table, and hanged up the veils, and finished all the works that they had begun to make. And upon the 25th day of the 9th month, which is called the month of Caslev, in the 148th year, they rose up betimes in the morning, and offered sacrifice according to the law upon the new altar of burnt offerings that they had made, according to the time and according to the day that the heathen had defiled it. In the same day it was made new with songs, and harps, and lutes, and cymbals. And all the people fell upon their faces, worshipping and praising toward the heaven him that had given them good success. So they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days, offering burnt offerings with gladness, and offered sacrifices of deliverance and praise, and decked the forefront of the temple with crowns of gold and shields, and dedicated the gates and chambers, and hanged doors upon them. Thus there was very great gladness among the people, and the reproach of the heathen was put away. So Judas and his brethren, with it the whole congregation of Israel, ordained that the days of dedication of the altar should be kept in their season from year to year by the space of 8 days, from the 25th day of the month of Caslev, with mirth and gladness. And at the same time builded they up Mount Zion with high walls, and strong towers round about, lest the Gentiles should come and tread it down, as they had done afore. Therefore they set a garrison there to keep it, and fortified Bethsura to keep it, that the people might have a defense against Idumea. 1 Maccabees chapter 5. Now when the nations round about heard that the altar was builded, and the sanctuary renewed as afore, they were sore grieved. Therefore they thought to destroy the generation of Jacob that was among them, and began to slay and destroy the people. Then Judas fought against the children of Esau in Idumea at Arabathine. because they besieged the Israelites, and he smote them with a great plague, and drove them to straits, and took their spoils. He thought also upon the malice of the children of Ben, which had been a snare and an hindrance unto the people, when they lay in wait for them in the highway. Wherefore he shut them up in towers, and besieged them, and destroyed them utterly, and burnt their towers with fire, and with all that were in them. Afterward went he against the children of Ammon, where he found a mighty power, and a great multitude with Timotheus their captain. So he had many battles with them, but they were destroyed before him, and so he discomfited them. And took Gezer with the towns thereof, and so turned in again into Judea. Then the heathen that were in Galaad gathered them together against the Israelites that were in their quarters to slay them. But they fled to the castle of Dathaman, and sent letters to Judas and to his brethren, saying, The heathen that are about us are gathered against us to destroy us. And they make them ready for to come, and to take the fortress whereunto we are fled, and Timotheus is captain of their host. Come now therefore, and deliver us out of their hands, for many of us are slain. And all our brethren that were at Tubin are slain, and they have taken away their wives, and their children, and their goods, and destroyed there almost 1,000 men. While these letters were yet a-reading, behold, there came other messengers from Galilee with their clothes rent, which told the same tidings. And said that they of Ptolemais, and of Tyrus, and of Sidon, and of all Galilee of the Gentiles were gathered together against them to destroy them. When Judas and the people heard these words, a great congregation came together to consult what they might do for their brethren that were in trouble, and whom they besieged. Then said Judas to Simon his brother, Choose thee out men, and go and deliver thy brethren in Galilee, and I and my brother Jonathan will go into the country of Galaad. So he left Josephus, the son of Zacharias, and Azarias, to be captains of the people, and to keep the remnant of the host in Judea, and commanded them, saying, Take the oversight of this people, and make no war against the heathen until we come again. And unto Simon were given 3,000 men to go into Galilee, and to Judas 8,000 men for the country of Galaad. Then went Simon into Galilee, and gave divers battles to the heathen, and the heathen were discomfited by him. And he pursued them unto the gates of Ptolemais, and there were slain of the heathen almost 3,000 men, so he took their spoils. Thus they rescued them that were in Galilee, and in Arbatis with their wives, and their children, and all that they had, and brought them into Judea with great joy. Judas Maccabeus also, and his brother Jonathan went over Jordan, and travailed 3 days' journey in the wilderness, where they met with the Nabathites, who received them lovingly, and told them everything that was done unto their brethren in the country of Galaad, and how that many of them that were besieged in Bosor, and Alamus, Casbon, Maged, and Carnaim, all these cities are strong and great, and that they were kept in other cities of Galaad, and tomorrow they are appointed to bring their host unto these forts, and to take them, and to destroy them all in one day. So Judas and his host turned in all haste by the way of the wilderness toward Bosora, and won the city, and slew all the males with the edge of the sword, and took all their spoil, and set fire upon the city. And in the night he removed from thence, and went toward the fortress. And betimes in the morning, when they looked up, behold, there was an innumerable people bearing ladders and instruments of war to take the fort, and had assaulted them. When Judas saw that the battle was begun, and that the cry of the city went up to heaven with trumpets, and a great sound, then he said unto the army, Fight this day for your brethren. So he went forth behind them with 3 companies, and they blew the trumpets and cried with prayer. Then the host of Timotheus knew that it was Maccabees, and they fled from him, and he smote them with a great slaughter, so that there was killed of them the same day almost 8,000 men. Then departed Judas unto Mizpah, and laid siege unto it, and won it, and slew all the males thereof, and spoiled it, and set fire upon it. From thence went he, and took Casbon, Maged, and Bozor, and the other cities in Galaad. After these things gathered Timotheus another host, and he camped before Rephon beyond the flood. Now Judas had sent to espy the host, and they brought him word again, saying, All the heathen that be round about us are gathered unto him, and the host is very great. And he hath hired the Arabians to help them, and they have pitched their tents beyond the flood, and are ready to come and fight against thee. So Judas went to meet them. Then Timotheus said unto the captains of his host, When Judas and his host come near the flood, if he pass over first unto us, we shall not be able to withstand him, for he will be too strong for us. But if he be afraid and camp beyond the flood, we will go over unto him, and shall prevail against him. Now when Judas came near to the flood, he caused the governors of the people to remain by the flood, and commanded them, saying, Suffer none to pitch a tent, but let every man come to the battle. So he went first over toward them, and all people after him. And all the heathen were discomfited before him, and cast away their weapons, and fled into the temple that was at Carnaim, which city Judas won, and burnt the temple with all that were in it. So was Carnaim subdued, and might not withstand Judas. Then Judas gathered all the Israelites that were in the country of Galaad, from the least unto the most, with their wives and their children and their baggage, a very great host, to come into the land of Judah. So they came unto Ephron, which was a great city by the way, and strongly defenced. They could not pass, neither at the right hand nor at the left, but must go through it. But they that were in the city shut themselves in, and stopped up the gates with stones. And Judas sent unto them with peaceable words, saying, Let us pass through your land, that we may go into our own country, and none shall hurt you. We will but only go through on foot. But they would not open unto him. Wherefore Judas commanded a proclamation to be made throughout the host, that every man should assault it according to his standing. So the valiant men set upon it, and assaulted the city all that day, and all that night. And the city was given over into his hands, who slew all the males with the edge of the sword, and destroyed it, and took the spoil thereof, and went through the city over them that were slain. Then went they over Jordan into the great plain before Bethsan. And Judas gathered together those that were behind, and gave the people good exhortation all the way through, until they were come into the land of Judah. Thus they went up with joy and gladness unto Mount Zion, where they offered burnt offerings, because there were none of them slain, but came home again in safety. Now whilst Judas and Jonathan were in the land of Galaad, and Simon their brother in Galilee before Ptolemais, Joseph the son of Zacharias, and Azarias the captains, hearing of the valiant acts and battles which they had achieved, said, Let us get a name also, and go fight against the heathen that are round about us. So they gave their host a commandment, and went toward Yamnia. But Gorgias and his men came out of the city to fight against them. And Joseph and Azarias were put to flight, and pursued unto the borders of Judea. And there were slain that day of the people of Israel about 2,000 men, so that there was a great overthrow among the people of Israel, because they were not obedient unto Judas and his brethren, but thought to do some valiant thing. Also they came not of the stock of these men, by whose hands deliverance was given to Israel. But the man Judas and his brethren were greatly commended in the sight of all Israel, and of all the heathen, wheresoever their name was heard of. And the people came unto them, bidding them welcome. Afterward went Judas forth with his brethren, and fought against the children of Esau in the land toward the south, where he won Hebron, and the towns thereof, and he destroyed the castle thereof, and burnt the towers thereof round about. Then removed he to go into the land of the strangers, and went through Samaria. At the same time were the priests of the cities slain in the battle, which would show their valiantness, and went forth to battle without counsel. And when Judas came to Azotus in the strangers' land, he broke down their altars, and burnt with fire the images of their gods, and took away the spoils of the cities, and came again into the land of Judah. First Maccabees chapter 6. Now when King Antiochus traveled through the high countries, he heard that Elamias in the country of Persia was a great city, renowned for riches, silver, and gold, and that there was in it a very rich temple, whereas were covering of gold, coat armors, and harness, which Alexander, king of Macedonia, the son of Philip, that reigned first in Grecia, had left there. Wherefore he went about to take the city and to spoil it, but he was not able, for the citizens were warned of the matter, and rose up against him in battle. And he fled and departed thence with great heaviness, and came again into Babylon. Moreover, there came one which brought him tidings in the country of Persia, that the armies that went against the land of Judah were driven away, and that Lysias, which went forth first with a great power, was driven away of the Jews, and that they were made strong by the armor and power and divers spoils, which they had gotten of the armies whom they had destroyed, and that they had pulled down the abomination which he had set up upon the altar at Jerusalem, and fenced the city with the sanctuary with high walls, as it was afore, and Bethsura his city. So when the king had heard these words, he was astonished and sore moved. Therefore he laid him down upon his bed, and fell sick for very sorrow, because it was not come to pass as he had thought. And there continued he many days, for his grief was ever more and more, so that he saw he must needs die. Therefore he sent for all his friends, and said unto them, The sleep is gone from mine eyes, and mine heart faileth for very care. And I think with myself, Into what adversity am I come? And into what floods of misery am I fallen now? Whereas aforetime I was in prosperity, and greatly set by reason of my power? And now do I remember the evils that I have done at Jerusalem, for I took all the vessels of gold and of silver that were in it, and sent to destroy the inhabitants of Judah without cause. I know that these troubles are come upon me for the same cause. And behold, I must die with great sorrow in a strange land. Then called he for Philip, one of his friends, whom he made ruler of all his realm, and gave him the crown and his robe and the ring, that he should instruct his son Antiochus, and bring him up until he might reign himself. So King Antiochus died there in the 149th year. When Lysias knew that the king was dead, he ordained Antiochus his son, whom he had brought up, to reign in his father's stead, and called him Eupator. Excuse me. Now they that were in the castle at Jerusalem kept in the Israelites round about the sanctuary, and sought always their hurt, and the strengthening of the heathen. Therefore Judas thought to destroy them, and called all the people together to besiege them. So they came together and besieged them in the 150th year, and made instruments to shoot and other engines of war. But certain of them that were besieged gat forth, unto whom some ungodly men of Israel joined themselves, And they went unto the king, saying, How long wilt thou cease from executing judgment and avenge our brethren? We have been ready to serve thy father, and to go forward in those things that he appointed, and to obey his commandments. Therefore they of our nations fell from us for this cause, and wheresoever they found any of us, they slew them, and spoiled our inheritance. And they have not only laid hand upon us, but upon all about their borders. And behold, this day they are besieging the castle at Jerusalem to take it, and have fortified the sanctuary and Bethsura. And if thou dost not prevent them quickly, they will do greater things than these, and thou shalt not be able to overcome them. When the king heard this, he was very angry, and called all his friends, the captains of his army and his horsemen, and bands that were hired, came unto him from the kings that were confederate, and from the isles of the sea. So the number of his army was 100,000 footmen, and 20,000 horsemen, and 32 elephants exercised in battle. These came through Idumea, and drew near to Bethsura, and besieged it a long season, and made engines of war, but they came out, and burnt them with fire, and fought valiantly. Then departed Judas from the castle, and removed the host toward Beth Zacharias over against the king's camp. So the king arose very early, and brought the army and his power toward the way of Beth Zacharias, where the army set themselves in array to the battle, and blew the trumpets. And to provoke the elephants for to fight, they showed them the blood of grapes and mulberries. And they set the beasts according to the ranges, so that by every elephant there stood 1,000 men armed with coats of mail, and helmets of brass upon their heads. And unto every beast were ordained 500 horsemen of the best, which were ready at all times wheresoever the beast was, and whithersoever the beast went, they went also, and departed not from him. And upon them were strong towers of wood that covered every beast, which were fastened thereon with instruments, and upon every one was 32 men that fought in them, and the Indian that ruled them. They set also the remnant of the horsemen upon both the sides in 2 wings of the host to stir them up, and to keep them in the valleys. And when the sun shone upon the golden shields, the mountains glistered therewith, and gave light as lamps of fire. Thus part of the king's army was spread upon the high mountains, and part beneath. So they marched forward warily and in order. And all they that heard the noise of their multitude, and the marching of the company, and the rattling of the harness, were astonished, for the army was very great and mighty. Then Judas and his host entered into the battle, and they slew 600 men of the king's army. Now when Eleazar the son of Abaron saw one of the elephants armed with royal harness, and was more excellent than all the other beasts, he thought that the king should be upon him. Wherefore he jeoparded himself to deliver his people, and to get him a perpetual name, and ran boldly unto him through the midst of the host, slaying on the right hand and on the left, so that they departed away on both sides. So went he to the elephant's feet, and gat him under him, and slew him. Then fell the elephant down upon him, and there he died. But the other, seeing the power of the king and the fierceness of his army, departed from them. And the king's army went up to meet them toward Jerusalem, and the king pitched his tents in Judea toward Mount Zion. Moreover, the king took truce with them that were in Bethsura. But when they came out of the city, because they had no victuals there, and were shut up therein, and the land had rested, the king took Bethsura, and set there a garrison to keep it, and besieged the sanctuary many days, and made instruments to shoot, and other engines of war, and instruments to cast fire and stones, and pieces to cast darts in slings. They also made engines against their engines, and fought a long season. But in the garners there were no victuals, for it was the 7th year. And then they that were in Judea, and were delivered from the Gentiles, had eaten up the residue of the store, so that in the sanctuary were few men left. For the famine came so upon them, that they were scattered every man to his own place. Now when Lysias heard that Philip, whom Antiochus the king, whiles he lived, had ordained to bring up Antiochus his son, that he might be king, was come out again of Persia and Media, and the king's host with him, and thought to take unto him the rule of things. He and his hasted, and were stirred forward by them in the castle to go and tell the king, and the captains of the host, and to others, saying, We decrease daily, and our victuals are but small, and the place that we lay siege unto is strong, and the affairs of the realm depend upon us. Now therefore let us agree with these men, and take truce with them, and with all their nation, and grant them to live after their law as they did afore, for they be grieved, and do all these things because we have broken their laws. So the king and the princes were content, and sent unto them to make peace. When the king and princes had made an oath unto them, they came upon this out of the fortress. And the king went up to Mount Zion, but when he saw that the place was well defenced, he broke his oath that he had made, and commanded to break down the wall round about. Then departed he in all haste, and returned unto Antiochia, where he found Philip having dominion of the city. So he fought against him, and took the city by force. Thank you for watching and listening. This has been Richard August, the Autistic Christian MGTOW, the Red Pill Man who lights it up blue. This has been today's reading of the Apocrypha text of my 1599 Geneva Bible. I invite you to like and share this video with others. I invite you to subscribe to my channel. I also invite you to leave a tip in the monetization link toward my PayPal account at the top of my BitChute channel. And I invite you to come back tomorrow as we continue in the book of 1 Maccabees.